Absolutely. No cap on goals this season, but there is now going to be a cap on Premier League club spending, as you mentioned. What's your take on the whole thing? I mean, do you think this is a good implementation, or do you think this is too much of a change too quick?
I I think I hear where they're going with. So simply put, the teams can only spend, I think it was five times, up to five times as much as the lowest TV revenue for a single team in the Premier League. So an example that was brought up was Leeds last season, were the lowest at 118 million pounds from TV. So do that quick math. I think it's like 700 million pounds if you times that by five or 600. That's the most you can spend in a season. Apparently Chelsea were the only ones that would have been affected by that. So real in the short term, we don't know how much it's going to affect the teams. And plus, I think they said this doesn't even come into play until at the earliest 2025. But to me, it doesn't make sense because it's not like the Premier League is the only league that players can go to, right? So in a way, in a lot of American leagues, like the NFL has a I don't know in detail, but NFL, NBA, they all have a salary cap. But really, those are the only leagues that for those respective sports, the top tier athletes can go play, but the Premier League isn't the only place that Mbappe can play. I mean, so he's going to Real Madrid. So why put a cap on yourself when I get it, the other leagues are not as lucrative as they are already as the Premier League, but why put a cap on yourselves that could put yourselves the whole league at a disadvantage when the other leagues aren't necessarily bound to that rule.
Right. How does that affect the European coefficient now? How does that
Right.
affect the team's Champions League opportunities? So it might actually be a negative for the club. I mean, for the league as a whole for it.
Right. I mean, the Premier League already is struggling in Europe. There's only Aston Villa remaining in Europe. I know three different English teams have won it in the last 5 years, but historically, it's been dominated by the Spanish teams, even Bayern Munich or and AC Milan and so on. So I'm not sure if this is necessary. I mean, if you tell me this is a UEFA wide introduction, I'll be all for it because it can bring more parity, right? We will see the likes of Burnley being able to compete for for the league, just like we see in the NFL. The NFL, there's things that can be said about it in negative sense, but there's so much parity in that league. Whereas in most European leagues, there just isn't. We're seeing only a handful amount of teams that can realistically win anything. So unless it's a European-wide introduction, I don't really see the purpose of this. I'm surprised that this was approved by 16 teams.
Yeah, and
I
another negative for me is I like to see an incentive for teams who finish higher in the table. I like to see I like to see like a reasoning for that because me as a team, if I'm thinking, okay, like if I finish eighth or if I finish 10th, it doesn't change my budget essentially, like my spending cap.
right,
It doesn't change. So what's the incentive for me to finish eighth in this regard, you know? I mean, I
right,
get it, like, or eighth or ninth or 10th or ninth, whatever it is. The point is I'd
right,
like to see an incentive for finishing higher and being competitive till the end of the season.
right. Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's no, I mean, this doesn't change your revenue. It's not like the league is not giving them 500 million pounds equally to spend on on whatever. If that was the case, okay, sure. I'm all for it. If the league gives you a set amount of money and you can only spend that much to everybody, that's your so quote unquote revenue. Okay. But like you said, what's the point of coming in? seventh and missing out on every single European competition when a team that comes in the 17th and they barely escape relegation and they can spend the same amount of money and they're tied to the
Right.
same regulations and rules as you. So there should be a balance of some sorts. Um, but then I like I said, I hear their point because now you would see, teams would want to balance out the TV revenue a bit more. Whereas maybe the top teams are getting, let's say, 200 million pounds and the lower teams are getting 100 million. Maybe they would even that out a bit more to somewhere close to 150 million each so that it increases the cap for everybody a bit more.
Yeah, I mean that could also potentially be a solution as well. I mean, I just don't think they're tackling it the right way. I like how it is to an extent. I do get that there is a big difference between the top teams and the smaller teams, and I get that they're trying to minimize that to some degree. But Christian did a video on it the other day about the status quo. I don't necessarily see it like that. I just see it as, yo, if you win, then you should be rewarded as such, like for example, I mean, we're playing scrimmage the other day, football, and we're talking about making three teams in the scrimmage, having three teams of five aside or whatever. And the discussion is, should they play king system where if there's a draw, should the winning team stay on, like the team who was on for the longest stay on, or should the team that stayed on the least stay on? And so the thinking behind both is, so if the winner stays on, like whoever was on the longest, then they've kind of earned that right to be able to draw. And then the other side of it is, as the losing team, you know, you you get a chance to play. You create more rotation. You get more even rotations in because that if you're truly the king, you should be winning the game. Is what the thinking is. Me personally, I prefer the king system. I don't know if I'm explaining this a bit confusing, but I prefer the king system because I like the concept of you earning the victory and earning the right to be able to have that boost, have that bonus. Incentives. I believe in incentives.
Yeah, I I hear you. I guess for that, you're kind of taking everything out of context, right? There's no pedigree that comes with one team or the other team within your scrimmage. Um, I hear you though. Winning, you shouldn't be punished for winning, and you shouldn't be rewarded for losing. Definitely not. I mean, that's what I don't like about American leagues. You get rewarded for losing, and teams, whether they deny it or not, they actively try to lose when there's a top prospect coming into the fold. So that brings me to this question. Would you ever like to see something like the draft coming into, I will just say the Premier League, but football in general?
No. For the same reason I was saying, I don't want to see, like the same reason you were just saying, I don't want to see last place get first pick. I don't want to see that. Like me as a team, I'm gonna be like, if I don't see a chance of winning, I'm just be like, all right, guys, just like lose every game now, so we get the first draft pick at the end.
Well, if you get relegated, you wouldn't get the first pick. I guess that's a little different than the American leagues, but
Yeah. Well, you get my point in the sense of
yeah,
okay, 17th. You
yeah, yeah.
17th guys.
But I mean, the thing is, you can't necessarily say I'm gonna lose every game and come 17th, right? In a sense. So, but yeah, I don't know what the right solution is, but I think we're in agreement that just a blanket spending cap, isn't necessarily the right solution for what they're trying to achieve.
That's all we have time for today. Guys, thanks for tuning in as always. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. Remember to subscribe, to leave comments, and share with your friends. Follow us on social media at FOTBpod. Don't forget to leave a review, rating, and most importantly, don't forget to turn on those notifications. Join us again next time as we discuss the highly anticipated upcoming Premier League action. Thanks again as always. See you then.